I've been waiting for you.
Hello everybody, it's BYG Agami back with another video, and today I'm going to be doing a discussion about the positives and negatives of Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS. So one thing I do want to clarify is that I'm going to be doing this series throughout VRAINS until it ends. I'm probably going to be doing it every 20, 16, 17 episodes like I'm doing it right now. VRAINS, at the time you guys are watching this and at the time I'm recording this, there's going to be about 16 to 17 episodes of VRAINS, and by the time the negative video comes out, it's going to be around 19 to 20 episodes, I believe. But let's just jump right into it. So the first thing I do want to talk about VRAINS and the positive is that it does a wonderful job of getting straight into the action. I mean, there really was no need to establish characters and really set up a path. And if you guys don't know what that means, it's basically like, if you look at the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, we get to see Yugi at school, we get to see him go through the difficulties throughout the chapters, along with really the buildup of him and a Tim. And once Duelist Kingdom starts to roll, that's when things get serious. Or you could sort of argue for Det T, that's when the group really gets together, because Det T is a very interesting arc. It really is. There's so many things that have been hinted in it and like sort of just put into it that a lot of people pass by. And one being is like the formation of Yugi and Ko and the gang. I mean, you know, you could see it right through Det T, all the stages. Yugi and Ko have to work together to get out of Det T. If they don't, then they die. And that's really when it starts happening. And then we get the Monster World arc, which I dislike a lot. But we get to see that again where Yugi and Ko are working together, and then Duelist Kingdom, Battle City, the Dungeon Dice Monsters arc, Memory World, and then along the SOD is somewhat there. There's some things that Takahashi really tried to do, like Honda, Anzu, and Yugi are trying to look for Jinochi and Bakura, but at the end of the day, it was more so Yugi, Aigami, and Kaiba. So for VRAINS, there really never was that, okay, let's try to build up Yusaku as a character. They just really went straight in the action episode 1, and they had that little time gap, that 5-year time gap. I mean, that's fairly long. Of course, in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh, we have time gaps that are 5,000, 3,000, 10,000 years. But at the same time, when we're talking about in the modern world, there never really was a time gap that was that huge. Actually, Zero Reverse is something that comes to mind in the whole events that happened, but Yusaku was still alive at the time. That's the thing. Yusei was just born. So I do love that. In addition to that, the character. I am a huge fan of Revolver and how he's been built up. A man that's so determined, and not only that, he has this whole ambiguous tone to him. And if you guys don't know, ambiguity is my favorite thing in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, Yugi from GX. You know, I try not to be a hardcore fan or come in the mentality of like a fan and being blinded by a biasism, but when I think of Yugi from GX, I mean, that just all plays into effect what I just previously stated. And I love Yugi from GX. But when we talk about Revolver, there's so much mystique to him that we don't know. And that's really driving me in. And talking about mysterious things, we have the chess pieces. So far, at the current rate of VRAINS, they've been sort of built up, discussed about, and we know that they have secrets within Soul Tech that even Akira doesn't even know about. And of course, Akira got demoted, which I will talk about later on in this positive series. But initially, I would argue probably 85 to 80% of the fan base, and this is just through my little survey or my tests, whatever it might be, because YouTube comments, a lot of people were thinking that the Knights of Hanoi were gonna be the main villains. I mean, I thought that as well. And of course, as more of the episodes went on, and this is really good about VRAINS, we started to see that I don't think so. That's what a lot of fans were thinking once episode 4, 5, 6 start rolling around, because they're already jumping straight into the action for the Knights of Hanoi. What's gonna be after that duel with Playmaker and Revolver? And in that duel, we also got a lot of info on Soul Tech, and we know now that they truly are the main group. They are the main faction that everyone is after, that have plotted these schemes from years ago, and that really aren't as noble as a lot of people perceive they are. They're snakes, as Conor McGregor would say, snakes in the grass. And another thing I really do love regarding a Revolver is just his father, Dr. Kogami. We don't really get a lot of info on him, but it's stated that he was someone that worked and created on Ignis. That's what he sort of talked about in episode 7 when he said, oh, it's just like killing your own child, when he talks about destroying Ignis. And we see that Ignis Ignis is also somewhat interesting, which I'll touch upon later on. But the Knights of Hanoi are very interesting. And another thing I do want to talk about is Ignis. Ignis is someone that's so sneaky and he's just hard to pinpoint. Now, a lot of us perceive him as a AI that can't comprehend emotions. Emma talks about that, Yusaku talks about that, Revolver somewhat talks about that. Even, I believe, the AI that Aoi has during school talked about that on Ignis. But we see that he's somewhat smart. He's plotting his scheme slowly but surely. He's most likely going to obtain his goals, which we don't know about, but I believe that he is probably a villain of some sort and has his own motives and is using Playmaker as a aid to really get to his motives, and that's very understandable. Now, right now, they're somewhat, actually, I don't even believe they're symbiotic like Yugi and Timar, where they rely on each other, because even though Yusaku does need Ignis to help him out in duels and such, at the end of the day, I believe that Yusaku can really live without AI. He doesn't need Ignis. But on the other hand, Ignis does need Yusaku. And one other thing I do want to talk about is the fact that Ignis is basically perceived as an idiot from a lot of people, and he's just annoying. And when I talk about a lot of people, I'm talking about the people in VRAINS. Some people might dislike him. I actually enjoy his character. I think he's funny. He's very much the humor of VRAINS in such a show that's not as, it's more mature than the previous shows, but it's not as dark, alright? VRAINS sort of gives off that it's dark, but it really isn't. I mean, they sort of cover up depth with this whole virtual reality stuff. There isn't really anything dark that we've seen so far, in my personal opinion. But we talk about Ignis, right? And he's trying to plot his schemes. Now, what could that be? And also, earlier on in the first episode, when we see the 5 other AIs that were trapped, and Ignis was the only one to get away. Now, if we factor in what people think about Ignis and how he's stupid, he's naive, he's a lot of other AIs would be, I'm talking about those 5s that were basically held by Revolver, that makes me think, because why would he be the one to escape unless he has something planned up his sleeves, unless he has a goal that he's trying to obtain? So there's something to look out for Ignis. Now let's talk about Akira Zaizen. I'm just probably going to give a little basic rundown in each characters, and of course when I get to the negative video, when I talk not bad, but rather what VRAINS really needs to work on and fix, and then it would become a better series, is Akira Zaizen. Now, what I love about Akira is that he comes off as this Seto Kaiba figure. Now, of course, he has nowhere near the trauma that Seto has. He's not as motivated as Seto is, but the Aoi and Akira Zaizen relationship is very similar to Mokuba and Kaiba. Now, of course, it's a tragic story about their parents and such. I mean, for Aoi and Akira, they lost their parents. I'm pretty sure their stepbrother and stepsister, essentially, that was stated, but it's sort of vague. We don't really know yet. We're going to have to wait until 100% confirmation. It's similar to the Kaiba brothers, where their parents died when they were young, and then they had to go to a foster home, essentially, and get adopted, which was Gorzaburo Kaiba. Now, we don't really know the whole inside story on Akira Zaizen and all that, on who adopted them. But the thing is with Akira Zaizen is that he is motivated like Seto. He wants to keep on improving the world, or he just wants to get a job, and Akira is wonderful at that. And I really wanted to see, now the summaries came out months ago during episode 7, that Akira might lose his job, or that was sort of hinted at in the show, and I was like, man, I really want to see how Akira loses his job and rebounds back from it. And initially I wanted him to go through some sort of trauma, like he's like, I worked so hard on this, but I think that came up short, of course, but it produced something much better than what I initially thought it was going to be on Akira's bounce back. Now, of course, he loves his job, but the thing is, he cares a lot about his sister, and he puts his sister before his job, which I think is amazing. I think that's lovely as a character that Akira is. But the best thing I do like about that is that Akira doesn't really care that he lost his job. Now, I wanted to, as I said before, him to go through some sort of traumatic feeling or some sort of just complete insanity like Seto would, but instead he realizes that his sister is much more important than a job, and that he of course is still working for Soul Tech, and the fact that he lost his job or his higher placement in the rankings of Soul Tech doesn't really get to him. It doesn't faze him, and I love that for Akira. Now let's talk about Aoi Zaizen, and what I love about this character is that we don't really know if she's depressed. It's just a fan theory that's going around in the community. I mean, you look at images that Giblo basically posted on, I believe it was Twitter, where it shows Aoi somewhat lost. Like, she seems like a character that's depressed to a degree, and there's no really factual evidence or something that was stated in VRAINS that sort of tells us that she is a character that's depressed. It's just more so looking at it as a viewer and seeing like how she acts in the real world compared to Link VRAINS. Like in the real world, she comes off as this timid person, and even in the opening, you can see that she seems like a character that she's an introvert. Like she doesn't want to express her feelings, but when she comes into the Link VRAINS world, that virtual reality world, she comes as the complete opposite, a 180 from how she acts in the real world. She's an extrovert, she's smiling, basically acting as an entertainer to the people of Link VRAINS. And it's cool because in the real world, she acts very sad. She doesn't act as confident as she would in the Link VRAINS world. Now, I want to see where that goes, and also just the whole thing that Akira is basically doing. From the episode 17 and 18 spoilers that we got, Akira is basically saying that Aoi can't leave her house, but Akira, I don't even know what the writers thought, but I just thought that was kind of stupid, to be quite honest, because of course she might not be able to leave her house, but she still has Link VRAINS, and I think that's somewhat simple-minded, even coming from Akira. Like, I would imagine that he's smart enough to realize that, unless, and I've yet to watch the episode hasn't even come out yet, that there is something that he did which basically negates her from going into the Link VRAINS world. Now, until I watch the episode and figure out, that's my opinion. I think that's just stupid of Akira to do. So Emma Bessa, what I like about her character is that she's a girl that really just cares about money. Of course, she has a lot of curiosity in her, and that's very evident in the episodes that we saw, 16 I believe and 15, where she is trying to figure out about Playmaker, who he is, and she duels him. Now, the thing with Playmaker and Emma is that it's sort of hinted at in episode 16 that Emma thinks of Yusaku as an interest. Like, she is into Yusaku because of that whole thing about the moon looks beautiful today, and then of course Ignis saying, what does that mean? It's just data. And then she says, you wouldn't understand these feelings. Now, if you guys don't know, the moon looks beautiful is basically a term, or it's a phrase in Japan to say that you like that person. But regardless, the thing is that that's just a term in Japan that people use, and she sees some interest in Yusaku, and she goes off as this person that's very, very to Akira. She's like, yeah, I'm into a man with power or money, and we see that Yusaku isn't a man of power. Of course, in Link of VRAINS he is, but in the real world, he's your average Joe with just funky hair and probably has a limited amount of money. But Emma has some sort of interest to Yusaku, which is that whole thing about him being a badass, that whole ambiguous thing about Playmaker. I mean, of course, it's not ambiguous as Yugi from GX, but people don't know who he is now. Of course, it was stated that Naokishima figures out about Yusaku Fujiki and that he is Playmaker, which we have yet to see, but still, it's just that whole ambiguous thing about him that's really drawing in a lot of the characters. And not only that, Emma, what I like is that for the following episodes like 14 and 15, we got to see some backstory on her. We got to see what she does in her life. Now, of course, it wasn't a full scope on what she does in her personal life, like her walking in the park, or I don't know, playing ping pong, or the thing is, like, we get to see that she takes her job very seriously. She does that at home. And now the thing I want to figure out about Emma is, what is the flaw in her character? Is it that she's too serious about her job? Is it that maybe what was stated about Yusaku and that she's curious, maybe that gets in the way of her job? Because of each of the characters that I've listed so far, there's a flaw in their characters. I mean, for Yusaku, his flaw is somewhat probably that he's not enjoying life, that he's too focused on something. I don't know about Emma yet, but I really want to figure out about her flaw as a character. Now, I'm going to talk about Gohan Azuka, but there really is, nothing to talk about except that he has a good setup. He has a good heart. His motives are very, very knowable. He's trying to do things, of course, for his attention, but at the foster home that he came from, he's doing it for the children. It's just as he's trying to hit to, well, at least the writers are trying to hit to the heart as much as they can with Go. It's his big buff gorilla head, but at the same time, he has a sweet heart deep inside, through all that muscle, through all those striations and gains that he's built. And now let's talk about the plot. Now, the plot is so interesting. I love the whole thing about what happened 10 years ago. What was the event that happened 10 years ago? How does Yusaku and Revolver know about the three things? Could Revolver be the person that helped out Yusaku? Now, could Yusaku and Revolver have a relationship or a connection on a higher degree than we think, due to the fact of what happened, I believe, in episode 3 when they were trying to go into Ignis's memories, where Revolver was riding fighting on that monster of his, and then Yusaku saw it even though he was in the real world. I mean, I think Ignis basically stated that Yusaku has some sort of connection to Link VRAINS. Now maybe Revolver has that, or possibly could Revolver be the person that helped out Yusaku? And most importantly, what happened 10 years ago that made Revolver motivated along with Dr. Kogami and Yusaku and Kusanagi's brother? All these things that we have yet to figure out about that has really been drawing me into VRAINS. Like, of course, we've had a few boring episodes here and there. I think the episode 16 was somewhat boring. I think the duel was really, they over-exaggerated the duel. They did a wonderful job on showing Emma as a duelist. I mean, comes off as a high-caliber duelist, but we all know that if Yusaku was able to defeat Revolver, then he was not going to lose to Emma. Simple as that. Regardless, though, it's just been good for VRAINS. I've been really enjoying it. Now, in my negatives video, I'm going to be talking about things that I think they can really fix upon, and that's going to be coming out Friday, which is basically September 8th. So stay tuned for that, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Check out the Facebook and Twitter fan page regarding Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and see you guys later.